Was it? Okay. Here we go. So we are in Joshua. We just started chapter 14. And we were talking about these, the cities that they had to put in. Okay, that's where we stopped, correct? Mm-hmm. So let's just go again with this one more time. And since we already have the background to it. It says, chapter 14, verse 1, Ve'ela asher nichalu b'nei Yisrael be'eretz Canaan. And these are, as I said last week, which was David puts in the word, the cities. So these are the cities that b'nei Yisrael inherited in the land of Canaan. Asher nichalu otam Eleazar the Kohen v'Yehoshua ben Nun, that v'rashi avot hamotot livnei Yisrael, that Yehoshua the son of Nun, the elders of the heads of the father's house of the Bnei Israel, and Eleazar, all caused them to inherit. As explained last week, I don't want to go through the whole thing again. It's just that you had a three-pronged approach here. That the Eleazar the Kohen would have his dress on as for the Urim V'Tumim, so that he would speak via prophecy. He would announce. He would put his hand into the hat, as it were, pull out the name of the tribe, and pull out the borders of for the people. It would be announced that that's what's going to be. He would say prophetically, and lo and behold, he would open his hands, and that would be exactly what he had pulled out. Okay, so there was three ways to do it. What is also pointed out, and I'm not sure if I covered this last week, is while the borders were already determined by Moses in the desert, if you remember, if you go back to Numbers, you'll see the borders there. The borders were only for Eretz Yisrael itself, and even the tribes, but not for the families. In other words, I can know where South Bend is, but I can tell you the borders of South Bend, but as to where you personally are going to live in South Bend, that's up to us. And we would determine that based upon this triad. That would be determined by how many people you have in a house. So we would have to, that way you would get the right land apportionment. Because I wouldn't want to give a family of 10 a land apportionment for a family of 1. So that was left to the determination of the leaders here. Okay, now verse 2. V'gorel nachlatam, and in the lottery of their inheritance, or by the law was their inheritance, ka'asher tziva Hashem b'yad Moshe, just as Hashem commanded via Moshe, or literally in the hand of Moshe, l'tishat hamatot v'chatzi hamateh, to the 9.5 tribes. Any questions there?
What's a half a tribe?
Menashe's tribe was split into two portions. Half of Menashe would be on the eastern side of the Jordan, because they decided they wanted to stay where the pastoral lands were good, and that was on the east with Gad and Reuven. And the other half would go into Eretz Yisrael, and they would inherit with the other tribes. That was the half tribe. They would voluntarily split up. You also have another tribe would be split in two, namely Joseph. You have Ephraim and Manasseh, but they were not considered half tribes. They have full tribes. And that's how you have 9 tribes, because how many tribes were there altogether?
12.
12, right? Well, how do you count to 12? That's the question. If I count Ephraim and Manasseh, which is really under the umbrella of Yosef, but if I count them as separate tribes, now I have 13 tribes. Can't have 13, right? So who doesn't get land? Levium, sorry. Okay, Levium don't get the land. That's why we can split Ephraim and Manasseh. And we couldn't split. There can only be 12. And the Ramban says that this is a thing throughout the whole Torah. You'll always only find 12. And that's because of the constellations in the sky. Just says we have 12 constellations. I think the royal family is called, but it's just that you have 12 constellations, and each tribe has as it were, is representative of one of those constellations. So also, you can never add to that. So if Levi is counted as a tribe, then you have two options. Either one of the tribe was left out, or Ephraim and Manasseh are combined to be Yosef. And normally that's what happens. Okay, what's the matter?
Is this related to astrology at all? Did you say
Astronomy.
that the tribes are named for constellations?
Not named for, they can represent. And the Ramban was into that, where he would say, it was from the Kabbalah, where he would say the constellations. So there's 12 constellations. I guess it's astronomy and astrology at the same time. But so we also have that connection. Yeah, we're the royal family.
So there's some meaning to the constellation that wasn't.
Oh, 100%. We hold that, yes.
So that's astrology.
Right, we hold by that. That's you get the whole Mazal Tov. Mazal Tov. When people say Mazal Tov, Mazel Tov.
Mazel tov.
Okay, so Mazal means constellation, a good constellation. May the stars be with you.
Really? It's interesting.
Yeah, so that's we actually do. There's some concept there. The stars do have some influence. Planets have some. I mean the everything up there has some influence on the Earth, as we know. You have the moon affects the tides. You have the sun. You have all these things that are affecting us. So it wouldn't be that strange to think that these constellations have some also pull on us. Right. So that was okay. That's that. Fine. So it says Gimel Kinatan Moshe, because Moshe gave a nachalat shnei hamatot v'chatzi hamateh. He gave the inheritance of 2.5 tribes. Literally 2 tribes and 1/2 tribe. Me'ever the Yarden, from the other side of the Jordan. In other words, the eastern side. We're on the western side right now. V'la and to the Leviim, lo natan nachala b'tocham. He did not give a portion in their midst. Why is that so important? I'm pretty sure we covered this last week. If not, I'll do it again. Whatever. But it's the reason that the Torah, the Tanakh is emphasizing this is Moshe is a Levi. And on the other side of the Jordan, the east side of the Jordan, since it wasn't Greater Israel per se, it wasn't the original biblical Israel, so he could have given land to the Levium. He had every right to give land to the Levium at that point. But he doesn't give land to the Levium because they're commanded not to have that, because they have to be operational in the service of Hashem. So if I'm going to tie you down to land, then you're not going to be able to do that. So that's why the rabbis say that he did not do that. The Metzudas David explains, Kinatan Moshe, says he explains why Madua Chalak Yoshua Nachalat Lichamato V'Chatzi. It explains why Joshua gave to 9.5 tribes. V'Amar, and he says, Im Ki Moshe Natan Livshnei Matano V'Chatzi L'Levim Natan Nachalam. Because Moshe gave to the 2.5 tribes, and to Levim he gave nothing. Ki ein latet lahem ka'asher tzivah Hashem. He didn't give it to them just as Hashem commanded. And he didn't remain even that which would be fitting for inheritance. Except for the 8.5 tribes. That's why he has to divide the way he does. Good. Okay, so now it says, Ki hayu b'nei Yosef Shnei matot v'Nashe v'Ephraim, because Bnei Yosef, the sons of Yosef, were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. V'lo natanu chelik la'Leviim, and the Leviim they didn't give the Leviim a portion of land, ba'aretz, in the land, ki'im, except for arim l'shevet, except for cities to dwell in, and their the open land around them for their flocks and for their possessions. Or so, that's literally what it says, for their flocks and for their possessions. Any questions? No? What does it mean for their flocks and for their possessions? What kind of possessions are they going to do? They're going to leave their coats outside, and they're living in the city, they leave their stuff outside. So the Metzudas David says, Metzudas Sion, says the Miknehem means Heim Behemot Gasot. These are the big animals, like the cows or whatever. And Kinenam, their possessions, is referring to the small animals, the goats, the sheep. So that's number one. He identifies that there are two different types of animals.
That's why it's translated their cattle and their flocks.
Correct.
But literally it's flocks and possessions?
Yep. Kinyan. Kinyan is an acquisition. So that's what I'm saying. It's an interesting thing when you know the Hebrew and then you look and see how they translate. You say, well, how did they come up with that? So the answer to that would be they're following the Metzudas Sion, who is defining the words for us. But that's really where they're getting it from. And then let me see what else. Okay. And now let's go to the last part. Kashir tziva Hashem et Moshe, just as Hashem commanded Moshe, Kenasu b'nei Israel, so did the children of Israel do. V'yachlaku et ha'aretz, and they divided up the land. So Metzudas David. First of all, any questions? Again, just as Hashem commanded Moshe, thus Bnei Israel did, and they split up the land.
That is leaving out the Levites.
Correct. That is, you got it. That's the point. Hashem, just as Hashem commanded, correct. That's not to give the Levium any land, and then they split amongst them the land, and they didn't give it to anybody else. Now, the Me'am Lo'ez, which was written in the 1700s, what he did was, he wrote it originally, well, there's multiple authors to this book, but it's the original point of the Me'am Lo'ez was, or the original author, was to go through each verse, or sets of verses, and to explain them to people so that they would understand what's going on behind the scenes. As I've said many times, the Torah and Tanakh is basically headlines, that if you don't read the commentaries, you're not going to get, you just won't get it. You may get some highlights, but otherwise you're not really going to understand what's going on. So what he, and again, the people who took over after him, because he died very shortly after starting this project, but he had notes, extensive notes, and so people put them together. But his intent was that people would rediscover, if you will, Tanakh. So, by the way, here's the book in English. It originally was written in Ladino, which is a type of Spanish, I'm guessing. Just like we would have Yiddish in the Germanic areas, so the Spaniards had Ladino. So he wrote in that language for the very reason, that's why it's called Me'am Lo'ez, a strange language, a strange nation, as it were. So it's he wrote it in their vernacular so that people would be able to read it, and that was his purpose. So again, the person now making this commentary on Joshua, and they know who wrote all these books. You can go to Wikipedia to see the names. So it was started in like 1703. I think it's completed 40 years later. It's on every single book of the Torah, Tanakh. I think like 24 volumes, and it goes to another thing. But here, why? So he's asking a question. They ask, why do they have to say just as Hashem commanded? Okay, and so he says, the author says, a person should always strive to purify his motives. Oh, actually, I'll go up one more. He said, we find in excluding the tribe of Levi from the portion of land and the other tribes, and the leaders were strictly following a commandment that Hashem had given them through Moshe. They had no ulterior motive. This is the whole point of what he's going to drive home. They did not think about the extra land that each would receive as a result of there being one less tribe to share with. Their only thought was to fulfill Hashem's commandment, as our verse attests. Just as Hashem had commanded Moshe, so did the children of Israel and they divided the land. So he's going with there's no ulterior motive. We find a similar statement in the book of Exodus, where the Jews left Egypt. It is written, the children of Israel did as Moshe had said, and they asked of the Egyptians vessels of silver and gold. When they took the gold and the silver from the Egyptians, their thought was not to enrich themselves, but only to obey God's commandments. Here they are. Remember who they are. They're slaves. They've been enslaved for at least 116 years, hard labor. And they're now being brought out. They've seen the 10 plagues. When you're going out, they just wanted to get out. It wasn't a matter of let's collect the money as we go. And Hashem had told Moshe, tell everybody, instruct them all to ask their neighbors for gold and silver. So, and why did Hashem do that, by the way? Interesting part of the Midrash is because when he told Abraham 400 years prior to that your children will be strangers in the land for 400 years, but in the end they will come out with riches. So he said to Moshe, he said, when you die and you see Abraham, Yitzchak, and when you see Abraham, the father of the Jews, up in heaven, he's going to say, so, what happened? My family's free? Yes. Did they come out rich? No. So God's afraid that Abraham is going to come to Hashem and say, excuse me, we made a deal. We're willing to put up with 400 years, and we did that. We fulfilled our part of the deal, but where are the riches? You didn't fulfill your part. So he says, in order for me to fulfill my part, the Jews have to ask their captors, as it were, could you please give me the gold and silver? And they do gladly to get rid of them, because they want them out of the country. Their sons have died, everything's destroyed. Here, take it. You want this? I'll give you that. So I'll give you twice what you want. Just get out of my land. So the point that the Me'am West is making is the slave population didn't ask for their own desires. As a matter of fact, what they wanted more than anything else were the clothes. They didn't care about the gold and silver. And the rabbis say, do you know why? Because a poor person wants something to wear. You can't wear gold. You want protection. So you want the gold, you want the clothes. That was more important to them. The Egyptians were really upset about the clothes, though. Why? In every culture, the rich people dress different than the poor. By the rich giving the poor their clothes, and now they walk around with their clothes, that's already saying, wow, you really are free, you're not coming back. It's not a matter of anything. So that the gold and silver, it's on loan. We'll get it back sooner or later. You'll spend it in our economy. But in when they take their clothes, that means we're equal. They didn't like that. But the slaves wanted the clothes more than the silver and the gold, which is why if you look in the verse, it says gold, silver, and clothes, putting clothes last. And we say achri, that's more chavi. The last one, achron, the last thing mentioned is always the more dear. So it's interesting. So going back to this, they didn't want to enrich themselves. They just wanted to obey Hashem's command. Hashem had promised to Abraham that when his descendants would be freed from their enslavement in Egypt, they would leave with great wealth. The time had come for that promise to be fulfilled, but the Jews were so happy to be free, they would have gladly gone out penniless. They only asked the Egyptians for their gold and silver because Moshe had commanded them to do so. So a person, so now he gets into the Musar. He's getting into an ethical teaching here. A person should always strive to purify his motives as well as his deeds. Even when one eats a Shabbat or a holiday meal, his intention should be to honor the holiness of the day, not to fulfill his physical desires. We therefore punctuate our meals with song of praise so that we do not lose sight of its true purpose. That's why on Shabbos and on other days, if you sit around, really we're supposed to be singing the Shabbat songs. It's not just something, a little ditty that we should do. There's a purpose to it. Namely, to remind ourselves that we're not just here eating our wonderful food. Let's face it, when you have a Shabbos meal, it's a better meal, a better fare that you're going to get the rest of the week. At least in Mish Hashem will be. Okay, you're normally getting your chicken, your cholent, everything else. At a normal meal, my wife will always say to people when they come and they see what she puts out, she will always say to them, because they'll say to me, "Oh, how do you maintain your weight?" I don't really, but okay. But they'll say that to be complimentary. But it's, my wife says, I don't cook like this all the week. That's why. We don't have dessert every day. It's only Shabbos. It's special for Shabbos. So with that special for Shabbos, I have to remember that it's not just a Thanksgiving, where after this we're going to go to sleep and do whatever we're going to do. That's why we're supposed to sing songs and have divrei Torah, words of Torah at the table. To remind ourselves this is a holy thing we're doing. Every meal should be holy, no question. But Shabbos and the holidays that we're taking off, our intent should be to feel that oneg Shabbat, to feel that joy, that wonderful thing, that gift that Hashem gave us. And again, that's where our desire should be. There should be pure of that. So that, and he goes on to say, purity of thought is a very great virtue, but also a very difficult one to achieve. It is much harder to control thoughts than actions. Nevertheless, one should never become discouraged or give up. The rewards are very great, and the punishment for impure thoughts can sometimes be very harsh. The righteous, and this is an interesting thing he's going to say, the righteous sometimes suffer greatly for no apparent reason. And it may be, he's giving a question, he's not saying it for a fact, it may be for a slightly impure thought for which a lesser person might not have been held accountable. In other words, the more and more I increase my sensitivity to Hashem and to what's going on, I am held to a higher court. If I'm the guy that's living in if somebody is living in a cardboard box and they don't have anything, they're not going to be held to the same thing as I am. Let's face it. So the same thing here spiritually. If you have 5 Jews lined up, if you will, okay, one is not as learned as the other. So each one, Hashem judges each one according to what we've done, what we've accomplished, and what we could accomplish too. I've always said that when you die, Hashem has a picture of what you should have been, what your potential was, and who you are now. And the question is, why aren't they equal? If they're not, hopefully they will be equal. But if they're not equal, why aren't they equal? And you no longer have the ability to say, well, let me give you a story, because all lies are off the table. You're in the court and everything is, there's no way to hide this stuff. So even such a great man as Nagdiman Ben Gurion, a person in the Gemara, was punished because he enjoyed the honor he received for giving charity. Woe to us. Now, this is not saying that if somebody gives charity, they shouldn't allow us to make them a dinner, so that way we can get more charity from other people. There's a reason for that. But in other words, when I make a dinner and I want to honor you, and you have all your friends, so you call your friends up and you say, hey, guess what? I'm being honored by the Midwest Torah Center. Come to the dinner. And they all start writing their $10,000 checks because you have good friends. So we now make our budget. We've used you. You didn't get, and you go home and you sit in your chair and you don't think, I'm such a good guy. You say, Baruch Hashem, I could help the Midrash Torah Center. I'm glad I could use my cloud, as it were, to do it. I'm really nothing. God is everything. God gave me everything. If you really believe that, you're in good shape. On the other hand, if you go home and say, guess what? Rabbi Neville called me up and he said he's going to honor me because I'm just such a good guy and look how many friends I have. I'm so popular. You messed up. Messed up. It's that simple. So that's what you're saying.
Excuse me, is this commentary is not in our book, is it?
No, that's why I'm reading. I'm not.
Sure, because I love that commentary.
Okay. It's in our library. You're more than welcome to look at it. I only say look at it because I can't have it leave the building. That's all.
Copy.
Oh, you can get it. You can buy one. Yeah, that's true. Okay. It's all in every bookstore. So woe to us in every generation when generous donors consider honor and recognition to be their right. Woe to those who encourage them. So here it's, by the way, this is something too. It's to the fundraisers of the world who go to the Gevirim, the rich people, and say, "Oh, you're so great. You give so much. You must be real. Look, God's blessing you." Okay, enough. We understand that is the way you're going to get money, but he's saying it's no good. You're not doing it properly. Woe to the so how much greater would there be their reward in the world to come if they would forego that pleasure in this world? How much greater is he who gives with a pure heart only to fulfill the will of his creator? All this in Me'am Lo'ez is getting from the line Kenasu B'nai Israel. So B'nai Israel did, because you could have argued that B'nai Israel, the only reason B'nai Israel followed the rule not to give the Levium land is simply because they wanted more land. And you're saying, no, that wasn't it. It's a purity of thought. They had total, that wasn't their intent at all. Okay? That's why, by the way, it says that when it comes to Torah, 5 books exclusive, then we're looking at it for law. We want to know what the law is. That's where all the laws come out. When it comes to Nach, Nevi'im Ketuvim, you don't learn law from them. What you learn is ethics. Because it says in the Torah that nobody can come up with any new laws. So, okay, all the laws were written. 613 were in the Torah. So I can't come up with 614 or 15 or something else. I can't say God spoke to me and told me, oh, we have to do this. No, you can't do that. As far as straightening the people out, yes. If you want to make a decree for that particular day, like we see with Elijah, yes, that's also possible. But not to give a brand new law. So it's mostly to teach us how to live properly and the ethics, which is why the Me'am Lo'ez can go on such a musar shmooze, if you will, a speech telling us how we should act and what our thoughts should be. Otherwise, you'd have no right to do that either. So he's calling that from the verses. Okay, I just want to make that clear too. Okay, so here we go. Now we come to the next part of this. So, verse 6. Vayigshu v'nei Yehuda el Yehoshua begilgal. So, B'nai Yehuda approached Yehoshua in Gilgal. Vayomer elav Kalev ben Yefuna haknizi. And Kalev, the son of Yefuna haknizi, he has 2 fathers here. He said to him, Ataya data, you know davar shediber Hashem el Moshe, the thing, whichever the word, that Hashem spoke to Moshe, Isha Elokim, the man of God, alodotai ve'alodotecha, on my matters and on your matters, concerning me and concerning you, Kadesh Barnea in Kadesh Barnea. Kalev ben Yefuna is the spy who went with Joshua along with the other 10, along with 10 others, into the land of Israel. 10 of the spies gave a bad report saying that we could not take over Israel, and Joshua and Kalev were the only ones to say we can take over Israel because God said so. So God promised Moshe that the 10 spies would die in the desert, but the 2 who spoke the truth, namely Caleb and Joshua, would go in and inherit the land. So now, 7 years later, Caleb, the son of Yefunah Kenizi, again, what happened was, by the way, he's really the son of Yefunah, and his father, Yefunah, his father died, and his mother remarried the Kenazite, Kenaz, and he was brought up by him too. When a person brings up the child, it's considered as if they are a parent that way. Not that it's total adoption, so you don't kick out Yefunah, but so he's called by both parents, by both fathers, excuse me. Nothing gets a double portion. He's only going to get his portion of Yehuda, whatever portion he would get.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The hey before Kenizi is translated the Kenizi.
Right.
Could that also be looked at as toward Kenizi? Like his father shifted, his first father died, and then he has a stepfather, Kenizi?
Kenaz would be the father,
Kenaz.
but it's I don't know. I somewhat hear the question. I'm not sure.
I'm going back to our class where we studied the hay.
Right.
Where
The hay of
it has
direction.
Hay of direction.
Well, that would be at the end.
That's true. That'd be at the
The
end.
Hey of Kenaz would be at the end. This is the Kenazite. This is referring to the Kenazite, the one you would know about. So it's and we do know about it because it's not the first time he's been referred to in this manner. He's referred to, I think, in if I remember correctly, it's either Numbers or Deuteronomy that we've identified him. That's why you know that it's the mother remarried, and that's how he got the Kenizzite name.
As long as we're talking about Hebrew a little
Yeah.
bit, I'm going to bring this up again. Asher Diber Hashem El Moshe, and it's translated, which Hashem told
Oh, that would be good.
Moses. So that
That would be good, already.
said or spoke, but told.
Told would also be good, because he's speaking to him, so he's telling him.
Speaking,
Yeah.
That's more.
That would be a more forceful thing.
Forceful, yeah.
Yeah. So it's every once in a while, Ashko will get it right. They'll be happy I said that too. Okay. So let me see. What is it? So I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, there's another question that the rabbis ask. Why did Bnei Yehuda have to come with Kalev? Kalev is going to ask for a personal thing. So why is the whole tribe coming with him? That's the question he asks. And he says, La'azor leKalev b'kashato. They're coming to help Kalev with his request. In other words, he's going to ask for a specific piece of land. Now, in the world of land apportionments, he's asking for a good piece of land, actually. So the other people may not want him to get this. And let's not forget that it's within the power of Joshua to grant a specific portion of land too. So it could be seen as, well, it's not, what's that word? My family, it could be a nepotism of a sort, not be familial, but it's nepotism of you did something. We were in a war together, so we made a deal, sort of thing. So they go up, and everybody's on the side. It says on my side, on my matter. And so what's that? And that was, namely, the matter that Hashem spoke was that that we would live and come to land and not die in the desert. Fine. So that's what he's asking, and he's asking this in Kadesh Barnea. It says, Ben Arba'im Shana Anochi. I was 40 years old. Bishloch Moshe Eved Hashem Oti mi Kadesh Barnea, when Moshe, the servant of Hashem, sent me from Kadesh Barnea, the Ragela Ela Aretz, to spy out the land. So now know that he was 40 years, so he's 80 odd at this point. He's 87 actually. Probably he's 87. Ve'eshev oto davar. And I brought back word kashi ilvavi, just as was with my heart. Good so far? Any questions? Come on. I'm going to say it again. I was 40 years old when Moshe, the servant of Hashem, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I returned, and I came back with word, according as was in my heart.
So he did his job, and he did it sincerely. Is he using this to build his case?
No. Rashi says, at least you got the words I was picking on. With my heart. What's with my heart? So it says, Lo ka'asher impi, and not like what I was saying. In other words, when Shamaraglim, he explains, Shamaraglim hayu be'etza achat. Because the spies, the 10 spies, all had one counsel. They wanted to come back and say that the land was unconquerable. We couldn't do it. That was their intent. For whatever reason, because there's defense and there's opposition. So for whatever reason the 10 leaders they had decided they're going to come back to Bnei Israel in the desert and say that the land is unconquerable, we'll stay in the desert. Now, let's just to their defense for 5 seconds. I don't blame them. In the desert, you had clouds above you, below you, on all sides of you, protecting you. Nobody could get you. The cloud, the water is flowing freely. You have the man, the heavenly bread, being brought to you daily, and there's no end to it. Nobody can attack you. It's the safest system you've ever had. It's a wonderful system. Sun shines every day. It would be like living in California and San Diego, Gan Eden on earth. Why wouldn't you want that? So that's one reason they said. They were living at such a level of spirituality where they could study Torah the whole day and learn from the greatest luminary, namely Moshe, who was one-on-one with God. Why would you ever want that to end? So they knew that the minute they would go into Eretz Israel, into the land of Israel, those things disappear. And they have to start rooking the land. And now bread doesn't get delivered. Handouts stop. You have to now work for yourself. And you have to somehow transpose that holy living for 40 years and not get off that spiritual level because you're not allowed to and still produce your food. It's a hard thing to do. Okay, think about that. If I'm learning, when I'm in school and I'm living in the ivory towers of school, I'm only invested in school. So I can study, I can be in the library, I can do what I want to do, and I can, as long as I perform, and I'm getting that out. Suddenly, and I think, I'm looking forward to the end of school because then I'll go out and work, I'll make my money, I'll still study, I'll still do all these things I dreamt of doing, and what happens? We leave school, and reality smacks you in the face because now you have to work. And you come home dog-tired. You don't have the desire to run to the show, to start learning more Gemara. You are tired. Your kids are yelling. Your wife is asking you for things. Assuming you got married. Okay? A normal life. And you have things to do. It's very hard to maintain that sort of life. And even if you can, suddenly you come home, and it happens to me many times, when my kids will say, did you get this, did you get that? I'm thinking, you couldn't have called me before I got home? Come on, it's not that far away. Just give me a call. Or whatever. My father used to come home from a hard day's work, and then he would be told, because he was the only driver of the family, Dad, could you please drive me to whatever, skating, this, that. And my father, he had no choice. He just had to get back in the car after a long day's work and get us here, and then pick us up because they weren't carpooling back in those days. So it was that sort of thing. Again, even if he wants to go home and he wants to study, he wants to live a holy life, it's hard. So that would be the defense for these princes who went in saying, our people won't be able to live at such a level. So rather, let's get together and say, we can't conquer the land, and we'll stay here.
Yeah.
Let God support us. God's money is limitless. Everything is limitless. That's not what Hashem wanted, but that's one of the defenses that were given for them. So what happened? So they came with this sort of thing. Vayar Kalev, he continues, Rashi continues, Vayar Kalev, Vayira Kalev Lamar Lehem, Shlo Yamar Kamotam, and Kalev was afraid to tell them that he didn't agree. He's afraid. So he said, I'm with you boys, I'm right behind you. And as my father would always tell me, whoever says they are behind you, just ask a simple question, how far? Do I have to look? So they say they're behind them, fine. Kishabah, and when he came, Chisham, he contradicted them. As it says in the Torah, Ekev Haita Ruach Acher, since God speaking, since these people had a different spirit, Shahaya Omer Lehem Echa Bepeh, which means that he said something with his mouth and something in his heart. So when he comes back with the 10 tribes, the 10 spies, and the 10 spies say that the land is unconquerable, Caleb is the one that says, the land is conquerable, we can go in. Joshua was a done deal, by the way. Everybody knew Joshua would agree and say we could go in, even if he was the only man standing, because he was Moshe's second guy. So they knew that he wouldn't disagree. But the surprise was Kalev. So now Kalev is saying, I spoke as with my heart, what was true, and not what I was saying to the spies. And as a result of that, Ve'achai, we are now 18. Ve'achai asher alu imi, and my brothers that went up with me, himsiv et leiv ha'am, they made the heart of the people melt. It was caused the heart of the people to melt. Ve'anochi mileti acharai, and I filled them. Acharai Hashem Lokai, but I fulfilled the will of Hashem, my God. Anything there? Again, my brothers that went up with me melted the heart of the nation, and I filled, and went after the way of Hashem, my God. You have to be very sensitive to the language here. If I disagree with you, and you are a wicked person in the annals of history, you go down as a wicked person, am I going to call you my brother? No. Remember, he's talking 47 years later. Why would he say my brothers went? You shouldn't say my brothers. You say these princes went and I went. They did. They transgressed and I didn't. But he's identifying my brothers, the spies, all the spies, that melted the hearts of the nation. In other words, I went with them, and in this situation we were all relatives, if you will. We were all related. And I filled, which means hishlamti, by the way. I completed, or I helped to reinforce the word of Hashem. And that's why he says mileti, and I filled. That's what it means. And then after Hashem, my God. So in other words, I completed people. I helped them to be stronger to follow Hashem. So what happens as a result of that? Vayishava 9. Vayishava Moshe b'yomahu. So Moshe swore on that day, Lamor saying, Im lo haaretz asher darcha raglecha bo, that Surely, imlo is if not or surely. Surely the land that your feet walked on it. L'cha tihiyeh l'nachala u'levanecha ad olam. To you will be the inheritance to your sons forever. Kimileta, because you followed, you fulfilled, you strengthened. Achrei Hashem Elokai, after Hashem, my God. You fulfilled, in other words, and they keep saying, translating as, you fulfilled the will. And the Metzudas David explains also that imlo is a language of oath, as if to say, imlo hiya davar hazeh, if not, he's making an oath to this matter. Azayeh onsho kach gazam. Okay, fine. So he's just illustrating that it is a oath to him. And where did he walk? Chevron. He walks in Chevron. Why? Who's in Chevron? Who's the famous people in Hebron? The forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are buried in Hebron. So it says that when he was going in, you have to go back to Numbers for this. When the spies were sent out, and Kalev, it says Kalev went to Hebron. It doesn't say Kalev. And so the question is, why was it individual? Because only Kalev went. And he went to Hebron to beg, to pray, to the on behalf of the forefathers, that Hashem would strengthen him so that he would do that which is right. So here he's going to Hebron to offer that prayer, to get that strength, and he has that strength. So Moshe says, the place you walked on, you specifically, that's what I'm going to give you. So he gets Hebron. The Hebron that we talk about today in the news is a Hebron that was owned by Joshua. And that's where we'll have to stop.